I've got some great information for you guys today that you're gonna wanna see for beginners, or if you're not a beginner, if you're intermediate, advanced levels. A lot of this stuff gets overlooked, okay? So we're gonna go back to the beginning. We're gonna do calibration on the E steps, and then we're gonna move on to pressure advance, then we're gonna go input shaper. We're gonna run all these things. Now, if you want those 3D prints from your printer that look beautiful, that look amazing, that don't have banding and issues and things like that, you're gonna wanna watch this video to the end. So after I complete a build or I get a machine, I go through the process the same exact way as I'm gonna show you. Don't jump steps, okay? Start at the beginning, go to the end, and you will have amazing prints. If you have questions or problems or anything, join our Discord. I'll put a link in the description of this video. We'll love to help you out on that, okay? So let's do it. So now what I wanna do is I wanna go to tell this to extrude, just a small amount, just enough to activate and energize that extruder. So I'm just gonna say 5 millimeters here, and I'll hit extrude. There we go. So now that we have that, get you a marker ready. What I do, typically I have 2 rods for this. This is a rod that is exactly 150 millimeters. And then I have one that's 100 millimeters. But I can't find that one at the moment. And if you don't have that, that's fine. Just cut you a piece of filament, get it as straight as possible, get the cuts as smooth as possible at the top and bottom of each side, and make it be 100 millimeters. So I want to take it here, and you want to put it at the very bottom or at the very top of your extruder there. Make sure this is nice and good here, that you're not getting any slack anywhere. And then at the top, we're going to put a mark right here. And as you can see, this marker is a pretty good size. So you use the mark, and then the very bottom of the marker spot is where we're going to measure from. So then we're going to take a 150 millimeter and do the same thing. Once we have our 2 marks, we got one at 100 millimeters and one at 150. We're energized here. So now we're going to have to tell the extruder to extrude 100 millimeters, and then we'll see what we get. So I use fluid, so I go to my UI here and I will tell this to extrude 100 millimeters. If you have to, you can extrude 50 millimeters 2 times, but we just want to get it to extrude 100 millimeters. So do that, hit extrude. As you can see here, this is where it has stopped. What I typically do, we'll just kind of take a measurement from the bottom to where the bottom of that mark, which that looks about, I'll call it 4.75. So now we want to go back to our UI here and go into our configuration. You want to find your extruder section, wherever that may be in there. We're going to look for rotation distance. So here's the calculation we're going to use for this. It's not listed in mine, so I'm going to put it up here for you guys. So it's going to be rotation distance equals the previous rotation distance multiplied by the actual extrude distance divided by 100. So let's do that calculation. So on mine, if you saw, it was short of being 100 millimeters. So we actually extruded 95.25 millimeters when we told it to extrude 100. So that's what we have. So you take your actual extrude distance of 95.25, we're going to divide that by 100. This is what we get, 0.9525. So from this, what you have to do is multiply this number by your rotation distance, whatever your rotation distance is. So mine will be 0.9525 times 4.9472. We're going to save it and restart, and then we're going to do one more check on it and see if we're good. Okay, so we're going to put our mark on here now at 100 millimeters. Again, don't forget to also make sure you extrude a couple millimeters or something just to energize your stepper and get it locked in place. So we're going to mark this at 100, and I'm going to think that it's going to be on point this time. So let's put our mark up here, right there. So let's go back to over here. We're going to tell it to extrude 100 millimeters. As you can see here, that extruded right where we want it to be. So now we know if we tell this to extrude 100 millimeters, it's gonna actually extrude 100 millimeters, not 99.5, not 92, not 106. That's what we want. We want that across all machines. So at this point, let's put the nozzle on. I'm gonna heat the nozzle up to temperature, heat the bed up to temperature. Before we move on to the pressure advance section, I recommend if you haven't already, now would be the time to do your PID tuning. So we're gonna run PID tuning on the bed and also on the extruder. And I'm going to show you the steps that I use to do this to make this as accurate as possible. So what we want to do here is try to make the environment, try to make everything set up as much as possible like it would be when it's printing. So when I do the bed, I am going to go ahead and turn the fan on, the part fan. It's going to blow on the bed a little bit. So for example, if you run your fan speed at 42% and your hot end at 250, those are the things that you're going to want to do. Put the nozzle close to the bed as possible, not touching, but pretty close to the bed. So for the bed, we're just going to run the command though, and I run my bed temperature usually at 110 when I'm putting ABS, so that's what I want to tune it at. Just send it. Once it finishes running the PID tune, you can see here as it went through and did the whole thing, you have to make sure you run a save config to update these settings right here. You can also go in the configuration file and verify that these numbers have been changed to what they show up here. So you can click the save config and hit send, and it's going to do a restart. After you run the save config command, you can go in here and check to verify that everything has changed. So we can say 36.317 right here. Put it on the very bottom. And everything will be underneath your save config section down here where it says do not edit below this block. You also could just go straight to your heater bed section here and enter that information right here. Now that we have finished doing the PID tuning for the bed, we need to do the same thing for the extruder. Except when we do it for the extruder, I want to heat the bed up to the temperature that I run it at and have all the other settings set how they should be. So for me, that's going to be to 110. I want to run the part cooling fan at 55. And I want to bring this nozzle as close as I can to the bed without touching. All right, so I got my part cooling fan up to temperature. I have the nozzle close to the bed. Now I want to run the command. And since I'm printing at 255, I want to run this at 255. If you're printing PLA or something like that, whatever temperature you think you're going to be printing mostly at, that's what you want to tune at, close to that temperature. As soon as this gets to the bed temperature of 110 that I have the target set as, we can run the command for the extruder temperature to PID tune as well. Make sure the part cooling fan is on, your nozzle is close to the bed as possible, and you have everything set at the correct temperatures. For me, the ABS that I print, I typically print it at 255. If you're printing PLA or some other type of filament, use that as your target. If it's 220 or 210 or 205 for PLA, don't do 255. It's going to get you at a closer range and work better. All right, now that we're up to temperature, let's run the command. All right, so we're finished doing the extruder tuning now. You can see here as it went through and did the tuning. We can see down here, we need to run a save config and we will be good to go again. Or like I said, you can go through here and copy these and paste them directly underneath the extruder section in your configuration. Either way will work, and we're good with that. Let's move on to pressure advance. All right, so now that we got the Esteps calibrated, let's move on to the pressure advance part of it. So I'm gonna heat everything up, tighten the nozzle up good, and then we can start that process. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done now. We're gonna go to Ellis tuning guide here, go to the tuning section. We can go down next to the pressure advance. So we wanna do the pattern method. I'll put this link in the description as well. You wanna go to the calibration tool here. Once you get here, you can rename the file, whatever you would like to name it. PA pattern is fine for me. So we'll go through the steps here, what we're gonna do. We're running Clipper firmware. We have 0.4 nozzle, 1.75 is correct. Extrusion multiplier you can set as what you think it needs to be. I know specifically for me on this filament, I have already tuned this part. You won't have it tuned at this point yet, so you can just leave that at 1. Me though is going to be 0.46. Here I'm going to say 350 because this is a 350 by 350. Rectangular bed's correct. You can leave the travel speed or make it faster. It doesn't really matter there. Retract distance. You can leave these pretty much basic unless you know what yours particularly is already. You can leave it as it is. So first layer height is fine, 0.25. Here, your anchor options. You can do anchor frame. As you can see when you change it, what it's going to do. Anchor layer is going to put a layer underneath it. No anchor. So I just typically do anchor frame. You can do the print speeds here, change them if you would like. But I'm just going to change mine to 150. First layer is 30 is fine. I don't want any first layer fan speed at all. Change my fan speed. This is ABS I'm doing, so I'm going to just put it at 50%. Layer height 0.2 is fine. You can set your acceleration here if you would like as well. PA start value of 0, PA increment of 0.005, and the end value of 0.08. I do direct drive, obviously, so right here it's going to tell you 0 to 08 with a 0.005 increment. You can change that if you would like, or if you're doing a little bit more of a fine tune, you can make that a little bit lower of a value. All right, so the bed temp, I will change this to 110. The hot end temp, this is ABS as well, so I typically print at 255. And so down here in this section, what you want to do, it'll tell you here, if you're using Super Slicer, which I am, you want to copy your start Gcode directly from your slicer settings, not your print, not your printer config. You want to go into slicer settings and copy our start configuration here, which is right here. If you use Super Slicer under printer settings and custom Gcode, under the start Gcode section. So we're going to copy this and we're going to put it over here. That's going to change this how it needs to be. So from there, that should be all you have to do to get your Gcode set up. It's going to look just like this when it's done. We're going to download the Gcode and we're going to print it. I'm going to go over here and we're going to upload it to our fluid. And it's ready to go. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and start the print. So we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to try to show you the best I can. It's got a little bit of stringing on here. We're going to disregard the stringing that's going across. If we're looking at this, you can see the gapping and look in these corners areas right here is what we're looking for in this corner. So you can see each through these, they all have, down here at the bottom looks really bad. As we get up here in the range of about right here, whatever you get the sharpest corner on here without any big gaps or anything through the line is what you're looking for. So this one is going to be 0.03. So if we go back to the Ellis tuning guide here, the next thing up after our pressure advance is extrusion multiplier. So what we're going to do is calibrate the flow for the particular filament. This only applies to the particular filament. If you change filaments, you would typically need to change and redo your extrusion multiplier. You can use the same extrusion multiplier for different colors, but if you're going to a different brand, you definitely want to run this again. So you can read through this. Now there is some cubes that he has already made right here. If you go to his test print folder, you can download these cubes. This will show the settings that we need to do. So what we're going to do is go over here to Super Slicer. I will import that cube in, and here it is. Right click on it, go to add setting. You want to do filament. You want to do extrusion multiplier, checkbox, and hit apply. So now each one of these we can change individually different. Also, one thing I will note, along with the settings that you need to change, this needs to be 1. Make sure your extrusion multiplier is set to 1 here, because if it's not, if you have this at like 0.95 or something like that, your settings here is going to be 100% of 0.95. I'm going to take this and copy it and paste it. and auto arrange. Here's all of our cubes. I know that from looking at this area right here is the front left of the machine. So starting here, click on the block and you see it light up over here. Right underneath it, it says filament. From here, we can start changing it starting at 90. The next one we can do 91, next one 92, and so on. So here, these are all changed now, and we have 90 through 98. So we know where each one of those are located. We need to remember that when we pull them off the bed. We're gonna slice these with these settings here. Infill 30% plus, top layer line width 100. Then we look at the next one, bottom layers 2. So we just can copy this here if you don't know where it's at. Uncheck this box that says enforce 100% fill volume. These need to be 0. This needs to be 2, and this will be 10. So that pretty much sums up the section right here. So when I slice it, 2 layers of infill there. So that's what we want. Now we're ready to slice this file, export it, and try to print it. All right, unfortunately, we ran out of filament on the last 2 cubes here, but I think we have enough data that it'll be okay. For a couple reasons. One is I already know what the extrusion multiplier should be with this filament, but this will give you enough detail so you can see how to look at yours. This starts with 90 and it goes 91, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 98. If you look, you can obviously see these are under extruded. Unfortunately, you can't see this, but it's irrelevant because this one's also under extruded. As you get to about right here, okay? So we're at 94. It starts to close off those under extrusion gaps. You can't really see here, but this is pretty close. But as you get to here, you can already start to see it over extruding slightly. In the center area there, you can see the gaps are thick. So here we can see a little bit better the under extrusion on the first couple there, and as it starts to close off, this in particular filament I know is 94.6. So typically what I would do is run this again. Since I know it would be between 94 and 95, I would maybe start this one at 94 and do this one at 94.2, 94.4, 94.6, 94.8, 95. So it gets you in a fine increment, and you can even do that one more time. I typically do it at least twice on this filament. You can kind of see it right there a little better, and you can feel it if you run your fingers across this. You can kind of feel the grooves through there. Our filament here is going to be 94.6, right in between this range and this range. Like I said, unfortunately we ran out of filament on that last layer. Crazy. All right, so now that we've done our steps, we've done our pressure advance, we've done our extrusion multiplier, those are steps that you're going to want to take. Now we can move on to, let's see if we can shake this puppy off the table. We're going to run input shaper on here. I won't go through all the steps on how to set the input shaper up. If you don't know how to do that, I will be making a video for that soon, so just hang in there for that. If you have already got it all set up, great, we can continue on with this process. If not, I will link in the description the guide on how to do that, the written guide. I will be making a video for that soon. So we're gonna run input shaper now. This one has an EBB36 on it, which has an input shaper built in. I also do have a couple other input shaper chips, one that is a nozzle you screw on with your nozzle that gets it real low to the bottom. And I have one that mounts on a couple different ways. One you can mount to the stealth burner if you have. There's multiple different ways you can put your input shapers on there. Let's run this thing and see how it goes. Before we do the input shaping, we want to run a couple tests. We want to make sure that we're getting something back here for accelerometer query. Then we want to do a measure axis noise. And we're getting a result back here, so we're good there. So now we can go ahead and run a real life measurement. Before we do that, we need to make sure we home and do a quad gantry level on the machine. I can run a G32, which will home the machine and do a quad gantry level. My personal preference when it comes to input shaping is to run this Klippian shake and tune module. Personally, I think it's much easier to use and it helps understand the graphs a little bit better. You don't have to run it, but I'm going to show you how to do it just in case you do want to. The first thing you're going to want to do is run this command over SSH. So you'll want to SSH into your printer and run the command. Copy it here, go back to your command prompt, paste it in, run it. Yours will probably take longer than this, but I already have this installed, so it's going to be quick for me. Then what you're going to want to do is after it's installed, you're going to come back over here, copy this right here, include shake tune, go back to your main cell, your fluid UI, whatever you use, go to your configuration folder, and now you're going to see this spot at the top that says K-tune in your configuration files. Then you're going to want to go to your printer config here and you're going to make an include for this file. And if you do it this way, you won't have to put multiple includes in here. So just paste it in here and save and restart. Now if you did go ahead and install the Klippian shake and tune module, you have a few extra commands here that you can run. One of these is going to be belt shaper calibration. You can read them through here and tells you what each one does. For now, we're just going to run axis shaper calibration. If you didn't install this, what you're going to want to run is this command here for the X and this here for the Y. Since we did install and I do run Klippian shake and tune, I will run this right here, axis shaper calibration over here. Now with the shake and tune module here, it will run X and then Y automatically for you. If you look in your console here, you can see it running. Now that we're all done, if you didn't run the Klippian shake and tune, you're going to have to run these two commands here. I'm going to put the link in the description of this. You're going to have to run these two commands right here in your command prompt, okay, where you logged into your Pi. If you did run the shake and tune, which I recommend, we can go back over here to our configuration. We can go to K-tune shake results, whether you ran the input shaper, the belts, or the vibrations. We did input shapers, so you open that. Here you're going to look for the PNG file of the Y and the X. So we'll just click on one. So from here, you can download it. This is actually a really good looking graph. Your graph should look like, if you got one peak that comes up high like this, is kind of what you're looking for. I'm not a professional at reading these things, so I don't know best either. From here, what I would do is do what it says here, recommended best shaper. For me, it says ZV at 41.4. So we go back here to our configuration section. We're going to hit this folder button up a couple times to get us back to our home directory. We're going to open up the printer config. If you don't already have this section, you can add it. I'll put this in here as well. I already have it, so I'm just going to uncomment everything out. So here, what we're going to do is what it said, which is ZV at 41.4. And once you get both of them entered, you're going to save and restart. So then I need to look at my X axis here. I just try to go for the recommended best shaper. So this one for the X will be MZV at 62.6. Go back again. And that's what we want to do. So now we'll hit save and restart for both of these and our input shaper will be activated and working. Thanks for watching the video, guys. If you have something else you want me to cover, let me know. I wish I could have added some more stuff in it. I didn't want to make the video crazy long, but there are some other things like installing camp and some things like that I also do with every build that I would have liked to have included. If you need help with anything at all with your machines or anything like that, get on the Discord and any of us on there would be happy to help you. Hope you guys liked the video. Please subscribe for me. It would help me a lot. Everyone out there, have a great day.